Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile, the podcast. This is episode 249 called Kristyn Hodgdon, part 2. Today's episode is sponsored by Smoo. Life is busy and keeping up with all of your daily vitamins can be exhausting. Smoo is here to simplify your health routine. Smoo's best-selling hormone balance powder is formulated with 7 essential vitamins, minerals, and herbs that are highly recommended for hormone balance, fertility, and PCOS. And guys, guess what? Now is the perfect time to give it a try with an exclusive early Black Friday offer just for Infertile AF podcast listeners. Go to thesmooco.com, that's TheSmooco.com, and enjoy a generous 20% off site-wide using the code INFERTILEAF at checkout. Again, that's TheSmooco.com, thesmooco.com, and enjoy 20% off with the code INFERTILEAF. Take a step towards a healthier, more balanced you today and try Smoo. Thanks, Smoo. This podcast is sponsored by Rescripted DX. Rescripted DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive Rescripted DX test is endometriosis with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, Rescripted DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about Rescripted DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile AF listeners are getting $75 off the Rescripted DX test. So all you have to do is go to rescriptedDX.com or download the app Rescripted DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, Rescripted DX. All right, guys, I am so happy to have my guest today. It's Kristyn Hodgdon, who I first talked to in January 2020 on the podcast. And at the time, she was the founder of the Fertility Tribe, which has now become Rescripted, which we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. So definitely stick around for that. She had twins who were toddlers, and today they're 5 years old. So she was not done with her family building journey at the time. And we are going to hear today everything else she has gone through since we last spoke in 2020. So it's been a couple of years. It's been a roller coaster. She's going to get into all of it, including some losses, some failed transfers, and some other things, and kind of where she is now and what she's going to do next. So what I love about Kristyn is her honesty and her willingness and desire to just share her story and be really vocal about all the hard parts of infertility, secondary infertility, and just everything she's gone through and what she's doing now to help in the women's health space. And she's got some really cool stuff going on. So thanks again to Kristyn. Without further ado, this is Kristyn's infertility story. Kristyn, it's so good to talk to you.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Oh my gosh, thank you for doing this.
It's been over 3 years.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So your first episode came out January 15th, 2020.
Wow.
It was before like the pandemic, really, which is wild. Right before
we were so
before the world shut down. I know, right? I'm such a different person now. But, the podcast was not even a year old. So you're one of my like first, handful of guests. And I know so much has happened, in your personal life, your family building journey, your business world. We finally got to meet in person last year or earlier this year, which was fun and cool. So tell me, okay, so when we left off, it was 2020. You had toddler twins. You said they were like a year and a half at that point, right?
Not even. It was like, okay. They had turned 1 in October and you said it was January. So yeah,
right.
Just a little over 1.
Okay. So tell me what's happened since then.
And they just started kindergarten. So
oh my God,
that it goes in the blink of an eye is crazy.
It's so wild.
Yes, a lot has happened since then. The pandemic feels like a blur now, and where do I begin? But basically, we were sort of in the thick of it. We had toddler twins, COVID happened. I was working full time in book publishing still. I was at my former company for 8.5 years. So was still doing that, still, working on what was then the Fertility Tribe.
Fertility Tribe, right.
Yep. On the side and growing that, and then had no childcare on top of it. So it was a crazy time. And then I guess you could say, like, when things semi come down with the pandemic, we started thinking about going back to do another transfer. And, I should preface this by saying, like, never did it cross my mind that, like, we would ever go through all of our embryos. Like, I have PCOS, so, like, this is an annoying number for some people to hear, but, like, we retrieved 45 eggs, like, went into OHSS, like, that whole thing. But obviously
that is a high number, but can you explain why it was 45 eggs for somebody that might not realize what happens with that?
Yep. So I have PCOS, so I don't ovulate on my own. So my AMH and, like, my ovarian reserve is insanely high, but I always like to say, like, it's more about quality than it is quantity.
Totally.
And we'll come back to that later. But but after the twins, I still had 9 embryos left. So they weren't genetically tested, but I was like, okay, we only want one more baby. This will happen for us. Like, it wasn't really a question of if, it was a question of
Did
when.
you feel pretty confident?
Oh yeah. Like, it didn't even cross my mind that, I mean, like, and even now, after all the failure I've had in the past 2 years, it's like doctors are still like, well, you've carried a healthy pregnancy, like, of twins, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be working. And, so at that point I was like, okay, I had carried not one, but 2 babies, like, held them in for 37 weeks, like, just by God. So, it was just like, it never crossed my mind that we would have trouble. So went back for a transfer in August of 2021.
Okay.
When the twins were, like, not quite 3 years old. And I'm like, oh, they're going to be like 3.5 years apart. Like, it was just
planning
like
it all out, Kristyn, right?
It was like this whole thing. Like, even though, like, infertility as though I, like, didn't have enough PTSD from infertility, like, I still thought I could plan this somehow.
Isn't that funny? It's almost like a self-protective mechanism where, like, you forget, I think, and try to, like, be like, it's all normal. Like, that's all going to be great. Like, I remember doing that too, to a certain degree.
And I literally get chills. Like,
I just got the chills. That's so funny that you said that.
I just got chills too. But, like, I had a lot of trauma, like, related to not only getting pregnant, but staying pregnant, not with miscarriages, but actually I went to preterm labor at 26 weeks and was on bed rest for 10 weeks, in the hospital for 28 nights, ended up going home at 34 weeks and not giving birth till 37. So, like, really lucked out, but, like, it was touch and go there for a very long time. And then had a vaginal birth and a C-section, like, so emergent C-section, then had a postpartum hemorrhage. Then I had, like, postpartum depression and anxiety. So it was like this whole thing that, like, took me 3 years almost to get over, but, like, even, like, wrap my head around being ready again.
Totally. Was there a moment where you felt like you finally were ready, or do you feel like it's like, are you ever really ready? Like, when's a good time,
Yeah. I mean, I sort of felt like, when are you ever really ready? But I mean, the thing people don't talk about, and I don't want to trigger anyone because I know people, it's secondary infertility, so it's somewhat different, but, like, I don't think it's talked about enough what it's like going through treatment with little ones at home, or one little one at home, even, like, that. It almost felt like every time I went through one transition with the kids and, like, felt like I was ready, then, like, another transition, like, hit me in the face, or, like, the pandemic, it was like someone getting sick or someone having to quarantine from daycare or whatever it was. So it was like, I would feel like I was okay to start a transfer cycle, then I would, and I'd be like, oh my God, why did I? Because, like, it's just like, you forget. It's kind of like how they say with childbirth, you, like, forget.
Totally.
It, like, I wasn't really mentally prepared for just the med side effects and the appointments and had to deal with. So,
right. And I appreciate your sensitivity and, not wanting to trigger anybody, but I also do think it's important to talk about that because it isn't talked about it, a lot. Like you said, like when you do have a little one or two at home and you're going through treatment and the appointments and, like trying to kind of hide stuff. Cause I had secondary too, as you know, and I remember my daughter, like I remember having a miscarriage and trying to hide it from her. She was little, but I was like, oh my God, does she know? Does she know what's happening in the bathroom? Does she know why I'm bawling my eyes out? Stuff like that.
so yeah, I'll get to that later too. I have a story about that, but so went back in August 2021, did a transfer, got a positive, like immediately day 7 post day 5 transfer. And like strong positive, was getting darker. My beta was on the low side, like 40 something, but I wasn't too worried because I was like, okay, as long as it's doubling. And then my second beta, it was like, blindsided. It wasn't going up at all.
Mm.
So it was a chemical pregnancy, which means the embryo implanted, but didn't, continue to grow. So like super, super early miscarriage. And I was like truly devastated because I actually never, I mean, any miscarriage is devastating, but it was actually my first miscarriage. Like I had never, all of my history with infertility had been not being able to get pregnant at all. Like the twins were my first positive pregnancy test. So
Right.
this was my first, like the minute I got the positive, I was like, I'm having another baby, and my eggs, like I should, say like my eggs were 28 years old. So
And
like
how old were you at this point?
at this point and I'm 34 now. So I was like 32 or 32-ish.
Okay.
But my eggs were 28. And like I said, we hadn't genetically tested them, but because of the age and because I had 2 healthy babies, I was like, oh, I'm not really worried about, chromosomal abnormalities as much as, if I were a little older. I just didn't cross my mind because miscarriage hadn't been something that I had experienced before. And so was completely blindsided and devastated. And then I had a moment where I was like, okay, my embryos are not genetically tested, and knowing what I know and working in the fertility world, like I have 8 embryos left. If that one was genetically normal, what are the odds that others are genetically normal? And I can't just keep doing cycles with 2 other kids at home, like hoping that one of them sticks. So let me narrow these down. And I was lucky enough to have insurance coverage. So went back, took a break, got the remaining embryos tested. Similar feeling when I got the call, 6 of them were normal out of 8. And I was like, amazing, my baby is in there.
Oh, that is amazing.
Amazing. Like there was, again, no doubt in my mind that my baby was in that batch. And then I had 3 failed embryo transfers in a row.
Oh my gosh. Wait, can we unpack that a little bit? That's a lot. I mean, what did that do to you, like physically and mentally too?
After that August miscarriage, or chemical pregnancy, I took a break, got the embryos tested. So it was like, got myself through the holidays, enjoyed myself, enjoyed my life, my kids, everything. And then like really got ready to gear up and start again in January, like thinking, okay, I'll be pregnant by March. Like genuinely, again, like no, didn't cross my mind. Cause just everything about fertility, you're like, I have age on my side. I have, have carried a healthy pregnancy. I now have euploid like normal embryos. So we took that factor out of the equation. And yeah, like January cycle failed, February cycle failed, March cycle failed, I think. I definitely had 3 failed euploid, whether it was in those exact months, I can't remember.
And were they telling you what was happening, or like, what did you think, like physically?
So that's what I was just trying to remember. I think in that time period, after 2 failed euploid transfers, I got a hysteroscopy, came back normal, where they look at the inside of your uterine cavity. I had a repeat HSG to check my tubes. Like I did the ERA, which has now been debunked with new research, but like I did all that stuff. And then I did one more transfer in July. Oh no, sorry. I did one more transfer, did an implant. did some more tests, like did, I don't know, throughout this whole period, I did all these tests, and then July, I did another transfer and it stuck.
Mm-hmm. Did you look at like blood clotting? Did you look at any of the immunology thing? I know people listening who, especially if they've had, multiple failed transfers with healthy embryos, there's a lot of people out there that happens to. If you don't mind sharing specifically, like what you remember of, you mentioned some, but
so
the other tests and things that you did.
Yep. So hysteroscopy, blood clotting, HSG, ERA, and then I had a transfer in July and it stuck, and I had a blighted ovum. So my HCG kept doubling for like weeks, and then when we got to the 6-week ultrasound, it was an empty sac.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I had one of those as well.
That was, oh my God, because I felt like it was finally happening. I was like, oh, it was just process of elimination. We finally got to the good embryo. That was my third euploid transfer. And then the one that I did before, I'm sorry, I'm like, I think I blurted it all out.
It's hard to remember. And I do think you mentally block it out too.
The chemical pregnancy, 2 failed euploid transfers, testing, and then a miscarriage with a euploid embryo. Then I took misoprostol to pass the pregnancy because I wasn't, passing it all on my own. I ended up in the ER hemorrhaging again. So this is like my second hemorrhage at this point. The first one was postpartum, and this was my second. Now we know that it was like basically just bad luck. Like one was because twin pregnancy, high chance of hemorrhage. This was just like misoprostol, which is essentially the abortion pill for anyone who doesn't know.
Right.
Can help you pass a miscarriage, ended up in the ER again. So at that point, my husband was like, we cannot keep trying unless you rule out everything under the sun. So went to a hematologist and got every blood test known to man. Like, we wanted to rule out blood clotting for miscarriage, and then we wanted to rule out blood disorders for hemorrhage, and everything came back normal. So it was just like, every test I did just came back normal.
Right.
And then, but after that miscarriage, I was really a mess mentally and emotionally. I had to take a break. I was like, I need to give my body a break, my mind a break. Took 9 months off completely. My OB-GYN was like, we're taking a hormone holiday. We're not thinking about it. We're just letting your body chill and get the hormones out and regulate, And then 9 months later, finally felt like I could give it one last shot with another embryo. We did a modified natural transfer. So we used gonadotropins to get me to ovulate, and then put the embryo in. So it's a frozen transfer, but it wasn't with like the classic like estrogen to get your lining to build up. They get you to ovulate, or if you do ovulate on your own, you would just do a natural cycle and then embryo in. And that one didn't implant at all. So in total, I did 5 embryo transfers over 2 years, and none of them, like 2 losses and 3 didn't implant at all.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, it's still hard to talk about because I just like can't believe I'm here. Like, I was like so sure 2 years ago that like we were gonna have 3 kids, and I know life doesn't always go the way that you want, but I'm now in this like limbo period where I don't know what to do next. I've been working with a nutritionist, RD, for the past 4 months. She's like working on my gut health, and we took some functional tests, and I just got the Dutch test back, which I don't know if your listeners are familiar, but it's a functional hormone test. I just felt like I needed to like go the functional route for a little bit because obviously the, traditional medicine route wasn't working.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think more and more people kind of meld both of the worlds, whatever they need, like take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that. There's so many different options now.
And my mindset was, if I am going to ever do IVF again, I want my body to be in the best possible place for it. Like, I was like, there's some reason why the embryos are not sticking. It's like, whether it, I don't know. I mean, the only test I didn't do was the Receptiva. test for endometriosis or BCL6, but my doctors didn't really push it because they didn't suspect that I had it. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing the functional stuff, and it's a slow moving process. Like you can't just like fix PCOS,
Right.
but the goal is for me to start ovulating on my own. But it got tempted a couple of weeks ago to go back to IVF and do another retrieval. Now I'll say I have 2 euploid embryos left from the original cycle, but I have such bad like juju with that batch of embryos at this point that I'm like, should I just do a retrieval and kind of cross out that factor,
Mm-hmm.
So got a second opinion, amazing doctor in New York City who I love. Made an appointment for last week, actually. You're catching
Who are
me.
you going to?
Dr. Jamie Griffo at NYU.
Okay. Yeah.
He's wonderful. But made the appointment to start the cycle last Tuesday and like didn't ghosted, didn't show up.
Oh, no. Today's episode is sponsored by my friends at Binto. In 2016, fertility nurse Susie Devine realized women were doing too much guesswork around finding the right supplements based on their provider's recommendations. Today, Binto gets you your supplements in individual daily packets with your name on them, which is really awesome. Binto makes it easy to stick to your supplement routine and enjoy taking them every day when you have more important things to focus on. But that is not all. Along with your supplements, Binto's health providers offer online chat support and telehealth appointments to make sure you feel supported, informed, and empowered when it comes to your health. Take the quiz and get started on your prenatal supplement routine. Head to mybinto.com, that's mybinto.com. Take the quiz and enter promo code InfertileAF for 20% off your first month. Again, that's mybinto.com, mybinto.com, and enter promo code InfertileAF for 20% off. Thanks, Binto.
I just couldn't do it.
Oh, you ghosted.
Oh no, I ghosted. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the doctor did.
No. No, I love
Okay. So what was going through your mind?
I just felt like IVF is not a guarantee. And I think working in this world of fertility and women's health, it's easy to see the success stories, but it's also easy to see the stories where it doesn't work out. And
yeah,
I have 2 kids at home. They're at an amazing age. They're going to be 5. It's not like I haven't tried IVF. We went through 2 years of transfers that
totally
just gave us trauma. And so it's if I knew that it was going to work, I would be having an egg retrieval probably next week. But
right.
I don't know if it's going to work. My body has been through so much, and I'm finally in a place where I've, been nourishing it and getting those hormones out of my body and trying to, I don't even want to use the word heal my PCOS, but just get my body in a better place. And now, and the thought of pumping my body with more medication for a
chance,
40% chance of a baby. I'm I think their live birth rate for my age group was 48 or 50%, but I'm lowering that a little because it's me.
Right. But, you're I'm always on the wrong side.
We have a bad track record over here. But so I'm, I'm to go through all that and then it doesn't work or say it doesn't work. And then I'm mentally and back in the place and emotionally back in the place I was a year ago when I had my miscarriage, not knowing what to do next, feeling like I'm a mess hormonally because I'm all out of whack from coming off the meds and going back on the meds, coming off the meds. And it's I've finally got myself to a better place mentally. And it's sometimes just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
It's so interesting that you say that and that you mentioned that, being in this world so enmeshed in this fertility world now and meeting so many people and talking to so many experts and people going through it. I did want to ask what effect that had on you and your decision making. And you kind of already answered it. But is there anything else that you've kind of learned along the way from being so immersed in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like science is just amazing. And, IVF is a numbers game. And, part of me felt like maybe my babies were the two good ones in the batch. Like that is very possible. Like you want to think like like every euploid embryo should lead to a pregnancy, but that's not always the case. But I think like a 40% chance or whatever it is for me to potentially be in like a really bad mentally and emotional place in 6 months from now, like wasn't worth it.
I love that you have the self-awareness to realize that. And also, I know that you know this, but you also have the right to change your mind, right? Like that's how
Oh,
you're feeling right
100%.
now. So if
Yeah.
we talked again in a couple of months, you might have a different opinion. So I want to normalize that for people who are listening, that like day to day, even when you're going through this, it's such a roller coaster that I think it's important to say, all right, what do I feel today? Tomorrow might be different,
Totally. And it does actually give me peace of mind that like all the boxes are checked at that clinic. Like if I did want to go like at any point start a cycle the next period, I could because I did all of the like pre-work.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just right this second, like I'm really, and I also think it's okay to like you said, change what you want, but like I'm also surprised at like your vision can change too.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or even like my girlfriend was saying, like I've always just had such a clear idea of like wanting 3 kids. But like 2 years ago, it was like not a doubt in my mind that we would have 3 kids, like come hell or high water, like whatever it took.
Right.
And now after all of the trauma and just experiences we've had and the good stuff, like we went to Disney with our kids earlier this year. Like they're now in school. Like I have more time to like pursue hobbies that, I mean, limited time, but like, like
Right.
I have like, they're not babies anymore. I have like a little bit more freedom. Like there's a part of me now that's like, we would be okay either way,
Mm-hmm.
I still like have tears in my eyes, like talking about it because I would love a third. And it hasn't really gone away, but
Yeah.
I know we'll be okay no matter what. And I have to put, like, it's not about me. Like, my husband says it all the time. He's like, this would be totally different if we didn't have kids. Like, we did not have 2 children. Like, I would have done 5 egg retrievals. Like, I would have just gone to the end of the earth to become a mom.
Right.
But, like, I can't just think about myself and, like, the vision I've always had for my family. Like, I have to think about them and, like, they're at such an awesome stage and I want to be like there to do their homework with them and like wake them up in the morning. And, I would say like the biggest like grieving process throughout this whole thing has been like feeling like this process has taken away from them in any way.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's
know
not
what you mean.
true, but like,
But that's a human response. It's mom guilt. And it's, that's a normal thing to fear. I'm sure it hasn't, but I think that you're an empathetic person to think that, and really good mom too,
and I mean, that's why I've taken so many breaks. Like when I say I've been trying for over 2 years for a third, like we did 5 transfers in that time because I had to take breaks or else I would not have been able to function as like a parent. And like,
totally.
it's also like kind of, I would say like its own trigger in and of itself, just like working in the fertility space, because like at times I had to step out of the process entirely in order to just like get my work done and like be a normal human, because it's like when you're living it personally and then you're also working in it and then it just like like it all melds together. And for my sanity, just like having to take the step back and like always evaluate where I am mentally, where I am emotionally, and figure out what the best next step is. Like, and the best way to describe it is like, I just do the next right thing. And like, I preach that all the time because it's like, I can't tell you why I didn't get on that train on Tuesday to go to the city for my appointment, but like, I was sitting in my kitchen still in my pajamas like 5 minutes before I was supposed to leave. And my husband was like, can you just admit that you don't really want to go? Like,
Totally.
and so, yeah, and like that could change tomorrow, but right now, like it's like just doing the next right thing is so important because if you're not fully in it, just because you can do something doesn't mean you always should. Like I've just been preaching that left and right.
Absolutely. I think it's so honestly, I think it's a brave move. And the reason you didn't go is because you were listening to your gut. You were listening to your heart. And at that moment, it was like, don't get on that train. You know, I think it's sometimes it's really hard to listen to ourselves. And, you know, I think that that's a good example to, again, you know, people who are listening to this to know that like sometimes people in fertility rally groups or something will say like, I'm not sure about this or this. And at the end of the day, like it's always like, I feel like you do kind of know in your heart and you just have to allow that to come through. You know, it's not always, you know, but a lot of times we know. And it's just like you have to do what's best for you at that moment, like you said. And it's okay also to change your mind. So if tomorrow you're like, you know what, I'm going to make that appointment again and go, then it's like, cool. Like, I think sometimes we also feel like we don't want the judgment of people. We're like, well, I thought you weren't going to do that. And it was like, F that. It's not about you. It's about me and my family and what's best for us, you know?
Yeah. Something else that I think is interesting to talk about is just like, you know, I started this like functional medicine process and like with the nutrition stuff. And part of me really wants to see that through also, not only to try to get pregnant naturally, because I am in touch with reality, but just like I have PCOS and I have an autoimmune disease. And at the end of the day, like I don't want to go back on birth control. I think birth control is wonderful for many people. Like I know that it gets a bad rap, but like I have nothing against it. But personally, like I would love to get to a point, baby or not, where my period is somewhat regular. And so like, and to not have to go on birth control like till menopause. And so like to do it just for like, I guess somewhere along the way, it became more about my health than it did about my fertility, because it's like, I want to be around, you know.
Yeah.
I want to be able to like we talk about like cycle syncing. I can't even cycle sync. I don't have a cycle. Like I want to be able to manage these conditions so I feel my best every day, and I'm not just like surviving, and I'm thriving, you know. And I think in the fertility world, at least I can get very bogged down by like the goal of having a baby, but like somewhere along the way, it just became more about like, maybe it's more important to actually like get to the root of what's going on.
Yeah, that's so true. You're exactly right. You know, it's like sometimes we all get those fertility blinders on, but it's like, but let's look at the big picture, which is like whole body health and mental health too.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay. So tell me about, that's where you're at today. This could very well change. Tell me about how Fertility Tribe morphed into what you're doing now. Can you give me kind of like the nutshell version of that?
Yeah. So Fertility Tribe was my, you know, side hustle passion project when I was going through IVF and when I was pregnant. Started it about 6 years ago. And then during COVID, like kind of around when all this stuff was going on, initially, everything kind of came to a head because I had been doing the Fertility Tribe on the side of my book publishing job and taking care of like 18-month-old twins. And I said, okay, something's got to give. I knew I kind of wanted to take the leap and try to see if I could take Fertility Tribe full time. And at that moment, since I wasn't paying for daycare or anything, it felt like a good time to like do that part time and then be home with the kids. I never ended up like really being home with the kids because just like all the stars aligned, and I met my now co-founder Abby on an Instagram live during that time. She had founded a company called Best Shot, which was mobile app for IVF patients to help manage their medications.
Mm-hmm.
And the short story is that, I had this like really loyal community and blog and publishing platform. And so like I knew how to speak to people who were going through fertility issues, but I didn't know how to like scale the business or actually make money.
Yes.
And she had, sort of the product, but like not the scale.
The community and the.
Yeah. So it was like we both had like kind of what each other needed and complement. Right. And we also have a third co-founder, Pear, who's our CTO and does all our site and all our tech. So merged our businesses, founded Rescripted about 2 years ago. And it's been such a fun ride. Like we are now the leading global media platform for women's health and fertility. We cover fertility is about a third of what we do now. And we cover everything related to women's health and wellness from first period to last period. So, we really kind of like put our heads together and we're like, well, why are so many people blindsided by fertility issues? And it's really because like we weren't taught how our bodies actually work in sex ed.
Totally.
We were taught pregnancy prevention. And then
we were taught, don't get pregnant.
Right. Like if you have sex, you will get pregnant. And
100%. I've said that literally 200 times on the show. And so many people were brought up thinking that. It's so fucked up.
So we recently did a whole like state of sex ed survey and the findings are pretty dire. And I would say like I was a 27-year-old college educated woman, married and already trying to conceive before I knew that like you had to ovulate to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's very, it's kind of a problem across the board, no fault of anyone's, but just like the society that we grew up in. But we really realized that there was like a before part, like we have all these people struggling with fertility issues, but like, what if they actually knew more about their bodies from the beginning? Like, what if 16-year-old Kristyn, or I wouldn't say we target women that young, but like, what if 21-year-old Kristyn with an irregular period knew how to kind of like take control of her health and ask the right questions and
totally but also Kristyn having a almost 14-year-old now, me, I would start that early. I've talked to other people and I feel like you and I had this conversation too that night. Like I'd love to go on like a road show and go school to school and be like, this is what you need to know about your fertility. Yeah. Like take it from us.
We will definitely get there. Right now we're like kind of targeting like the Gen Zs who are like maybe thinking about like their fertility. Yes. So we will we're going to go puberty to menopause. Like,
totally. Let me know how I can help you out because I'm really passionate about it as well.
I love that. No, it's so true. I mean, even I interviewed on my podcast, Dear Infertility, Elisa Vitti, and she was talking about how like she already teaches her young daughter like to pay attention to like her bowel movements and her body and like just stay in touch with her body. Like you might need more vegetables today. Like it sounds like, an aside, but it's like, just why was I 34 before I realized that like my gut health was important,
Totally.
Or like my, irregular period meant that I needed to like work on balancing my blood sugar or whatever it is, like stuff like that. I think it's kind of gone a little bit crazy on social media where it's like a lot of information coming at people left and right. So we're trying to like really ground that in science and say like, what actually do you need to do?
Yeah.
Or what do you need to know? But just being aware of your body and how it works and so that you make informed decisions for your fertility, for your, chronic conditions. It shouldn't take 7 to 10 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. It shouldn't, I had a full-blown autoimmune disease and they were like, I think you're just a tired mom.
Right. What's your autoimmune disease?
Hashimoto's.
You have Hashimoto's. Okay. Yeah.
So I was like having chronic fatigue and like, my skin was dry and I was always cold and like all these random symptoms. But it was peak COVID, and it was the end of 2020, and I had COVID. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's like a long COVID, or maybe maybe it's this. Then they tested my blood and my TSH was like over 100.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just like, you know your body better than anyone else. So you have to be your own advocate.
All right, guys, don't forget to check out Fertility Rally. We're having a Black Friday sale right now. It's $149 for our annual membership, which is the lowest price we have all year. It's the best deal of the year. Please come join us. We have 4 to 5 support groups a week. We have 3 private Facebook groups. It is a badass sisterhood like no other. We have virtual events. We have IRL events. It's the place I wish I had when I was going through it. No matter what you're going through, you are welcome here. We have groups for pregnancy after infertility. We have groups for motherhood after infertility. We talk about all phases of family building, assisted reproductive technology, all the good things. So check out fertilityrally.com. $149 for the entire year. It's a steal. Go on our Instagram too at Fertility Rally, and you can always DM me at Infertile Stories if you have any questions. Thanks again to Kristyn. Check out Rescripted, and I will talk to you guys next time.